everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience with myself, Adam Strong. And I'm here on a live show with my good friend, Les Evans. Now, before we get started, a few housekeeping rules for you guys that are listening in to us live. If you are listening to us live, congratulations. You get to have first-hand experience in asking any questions, with interaction and engagement, and all that jazz. If you're listening to us on YouTube and or LinkedIn, if you're not following us, follow us on those platforms. That goes for me and Les. And also make sure you click on that bell notification, which is in the top right-hand corner, so you don't miss out on those opportunities when we post content and go live. So for you guys that are listening in, as I say to each and every single one of you guys on every show, if you are listening to me live, use the hashtag live, use the hashtag replay. That would be great. And also, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that, feel free to post here just below, that kind of stuff. Or even if you just want to say hi, that kind of stuff, that'd be great as well. So we're doing this as a live show, by the way. If you are listening in on the podcast, we'll put any relevant notes in the description below, of course, and you can listen to us over on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, whatever your favorite podcasting channel platform is, whatever. So really looking forward to today's conversation, and I'll tell you why I'm looking forward to it, because me and my good friend Les Evans, and now for you guys that are regular listeners of the show, we actually had Les about just over a year ago. Actually, we've actually had a couple of times. We're really good friends. He's based in Canada. I'm based here in Europe, of course. And what I love about Les is he is as authentic as you come, right? Seriously, he has been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. Such a great guy to be hanging around with as well. He's a former CEO of a big investment company, and he's worked with billionaires, millionaires, athletes, entrepreneurs, business leaders from around the world. He's actually, I actually described him, I labeled him in a way, as a disruptive marketeer. There's a whole story around that, which I absolutely love. I kind of labeled him the way, and he loved it. And so I was going to say, he's spoken in over 24 different countries from around the world, trained with over 3,500 entrepreneurs and business owners as well. And today, we're actually going to be talking about how to reinvent yourself in just 90 days, right? Now, hi, Anne. How you doing? Hope you're well. It's good to have a good interaction here as well. You know, it's really interesting, right? So Les, now I've known Les a long time, okay? Les wasn't the slimmest guy in the world. I want to be fully, he'll be fully upfront with that. Okay, he was carrying some extra weight and that kind of stuff, but he's gone through a massive transformation. And we were speaking last night offline, and I'm like, dude, you need to talk about this. Like, he's created this amazing framework about how you can go on this massive transformation. But Les is one of the most smartest guys that you will ever meet. So authentic, led, and integrity-led person. But honestly, the conversations are going to be off the chart today. So we're going to have a lot of fun. That's what's key, right? We're going to have some laughter. Really important to have. More importantly, this session is for you guys, especially if you value health. And we're going to be talking. Well, let's talk about a few things that we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering what Les's epiphany was, like what was the catalyst for him to go on this massive transformation. We'll talk about what that looks like. We're going to be talking about the psychological struggles that he actually went through, because there is a lot of psychological struggles, especially if you're going through change. Now, change is hard, guys. I don't give a shit how successful you are. Change is hard. All right. So being able to reconfigure and reprogram your subconscious is extremely difficult. They say it's 28 days. I'm not so sure. I guess it depends person to person. We're also going to be talking about Les's framework. We're going to talk about his keys to success. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the relationship between health and wealth, because I feel like that's a really good topic to talk about, because we all know how important health is with regards to our wealth and that kind of stuff. But in reality, is it actually true? We look at like the most successful people out there, it doesn't matter who you are. Does it kind of coincide? Is there a core correlation between the two? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gents. So really looking forward to today's conversation. So just a further reminder for you guys that are listening in, if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to us live, feel free to head over onto the podcast and come and listen to us on there. And honestly, hopefully we'll crack you up and we'll have a bit of a laugh. Right, enough chit chat from me. Let's bring the main man of himself. Drum roll, please, Mr. Les Evans.
Woo! Hey, do I do the wave now or what?
I wish we had a couple of cheerleaders, actually. We should have a couple of cheerleaders in the background.
Right. It's good to see you, Adam. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always a treat. Like you said, you and I are great friends. And geez, you were talking about my description of my bio, and I was like, who is this guy? I'd like to be him,
So funny. It's pretty early over there in Canada, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 7:30 in the morning. I've got my morning coffee with my famous king mug, and the reason I'm the king is because I've been crowned plenty of times. That's a really bad dad joke, as my son would say. So, but I like to say hi to your audience. I know you've got a great audience. I love what you do. I love what you do at Game Changers. I know you're so much focused on clarity is a big thing with you. And, today's kind of subject is really all about that. Like you said, the epiphany and the clarity that I got to change my life. So where would you like to start?
Well, let's get some context first, because, I feel like we've got so many great listeners in and around the world. Let's get some context, because I know that you've gone through a massive transformation over the last sort of 4 to 6 months. Yep. But tell us where you were at before and where are you at right now? And then we can start from that. Does that sound good?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, prior to COVID, this is where we met on the road. I met you in the UK, I think. And I was a very successful business trainer, speaker, mentor, worked in 24 countries. Of course, with all the lockdowns and everything, we were all shut down in Canada, like a lot of places. And It really took its toll on me. It took a toll, I think, as it did to all of us mentally. And I beg your pardon, I started to get in a place where I was, I'm the most positive guy around, but I was getting depressed, and miserable and, eating a lot, drinking too much wine, because it's like, what are you doing? And, you're sitting on social media. So none of those things was really healthy. I beg your pardon. And so I found myself, last year, I got to my 60th birthday, June 9th, and I was starting to look it. And I was like, I looked in the mirror one day and I said, who is this old man? Because I'm stooped over, the gray hairs there, which I can live with, but I put on a lot of weight. Now I can't convert to metric very well. But I believe so I was 235 pounds. I think that's 107 kilos last year. And I'm only 5'9". I'm not even 6 foot tall. Damn. So
you look like a right dumpling.
Yeah, quite. It was ridiculous because, I was getting short of breath. I was getting chest pains. My knees are bothering me, all sorts of inflammation in my body. I didn't have anywhere near the energy. I'd lost everything that I was, that people knew me for, the person I was, had vanished. And in its place was this old man. And I was like, what in the world? And even my wife was like, this is not you.
Right.
And I finally got to that point where it's like, you know what? I need to do something. And going back to the past was not going to work. And I, like anybody else, I'm a knowledge hound. I was searching for solutions all over the internet. I couldn't find anything, nothing that would work. And I finally said, you know what? If this is going to happen, this is going to be an inside job. So I started to kind of deconstruct myself, because I realized that in order to be the better future version of myself, it was time to say goodbye to the old version. And even who I was, and this is something I'd really want to, this was a profound change for me. I'd like to share with your audience. I was hanging on to a career that no longer existed. because we couldn't go around and tour the world anymore.
Right.
And I was also mourning who I was, my identity as a person. So I was actually in mourning for a couple of years, which really sounds strange, but it's until I identified that I was trying to hang on to who I was, and oh, poor me, and geez, I miss my career and I miss the people, because I love being with people, as you know.
Yeah,
and I was
absolutely.
missing all these different things, and I was mourning it, and I went, well, hold on a second. What if I reinvent myself? What if I mold myself into somebody who's better than the past version? So the first thing I do is I started in a place of gratitude, which is, I'm sure, something you discuss all the time with your audience. And instead of going from mourning to who I was and what I was doing, I started to be grateful and said, God, you know what? When I look back at my career the last 10 years, I got to work in 78 cities, 24 countries, thousands of people worldwide. I was known as an influencer, a positive guy. Really felt I made a difference. In fact, I knew, and I had great joy and purpose in my life. And I was so grateful when I looked back at it. I was like, look at what I've been able to do. I've got to live a life that millions of people dream of doing and could never do. And so it all started from the fact that, you have to destroy your past in order to build your future. And in fact, the other revelation was that the person that you are today, what made you who you are today? And I know you've talked to Marshall Goldsmith on this. He says, he says, and this is a good line of his, what got you here will not get you there. And that is 100%. What I'd found is the person who I'd become, that I was so proud of and that I was hanging on to so hard, was now the prison that I built for myself to prevent me from moving forward.
Oh, that's interesting.
And once I had that revelation, I realized that aside from looking after my health, I had to make some major psychological shifts. And this is when the clarity started to come in.
Love that.
That's where the whole thing started. And within 5 months, I lost, I went from 235 to 185. So I think I'm about 84, 82 kilos right now.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. Applause.
Very fit. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That. Thank you very much. For you guys that are listening in, by the way, if you have any questions for Les, feel free to pipe in as well, because I know that, honestly, seriously, I'm so proud of you. I mean, that's such an amazing achievement, that be able to do that and accomplish that in the time frame that you've been doing it. And, you look good. Your back, your energy is high up there.
Yep.
I'm saying, like, you are, I wouldn't say back to your old self. You're not back to your old self. I would say you've got a new self, which is a better upgraded version of it. Does 100%. That make sense?
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, love that. Now, when you were, now when we talk about time frames, we're talking about what's happened over the last 12 months, over the last 6 months. What are we talking about? What was the realization to, like, when the result came? Was it 6 months? Was it 9 months?
You know what? It really came quickly, because once I kind of cracked the code, which I'll share with your audience here, things happen very, very quickly. It really doesn't take change. Tony Robbins is famous for saying that change happens in an instant. And that's really true. I came up with the basic framework in about an hour and a half when I started to break it down. And it all came down to, and I actually have it on my white little easel back here. I narrowed my focus, because one of the things I've discovered, and I'll share this a little bit later in our interview, is a massive discovery I had when I was working this year as a coach and mentor. This year already, for the past 4 months, I've worked with 341 clients, individual entrepreneurs. And I discovered some really kind of shocking stuff that's a big problem to us entrepreneurs that I'd like to talk about in a little bit. But I realized to change my life, you can't, we tend to overwhelm ourselves. And so I said, I need to simplify. I want to work on 3 specific areas in my life. One, obviously, is income. That's necessary. The second is health, which is a big component. And when I say health, I mean physical health, mental health, spiritual health, if you will. And then the third component, which I thought was really important that we tend to leave out, we talk about purpose a lot, living our lives on purpose with intent, but also joy, things that bring you joy, and to make that a priority in our life, whether it's time with our children or our spouses or partners. In my case, one of the things I miss doing was writing music, because I was an award-winning songwriter many, many years ago. And so I've brought that in, not because I want to publish music, but it gives me great joy to create and bring that to life. And people say, well, who needs more songs? Nobody. But my own mother was saying, well, Les, you're 60, you're going to be 61 years old. What are you doing writing music now? And I'm saying, I'm doing it because I can, and you can't. So
love it.
Once I kind of hone that down into 3 areas, you'll see a plus and minus right back there. I determined, and this is what I recommend your audience do, is I determined, because I'm a little bit older probably than your audience, the longer you live, you really see the value of time and whom and what you spend it on. So I made a very distinct determination that if a person or activity did not add value to my life, it's gone, just like that. A rather ruthless, if I may, but you realize that time is your most precious asset. And when it comes down to the health factor, we have a finite amount of life force, if you will, which is determined to a greater or lesser degree depending on how we're looking after health. So I realized that obviously my physical health was going to have to change. And in order to change your physical health, what does that mean? Retraining yourself. I hated exercise, hated it. I mean, I'm a lover, not a fighter, right? I'm a musician, not an athlete. I know you're like a high-level athlete. We were talking about that yesterday. But you realize that, the 2 biggest things, the most successful people in the world, and I know anyone in your audience has studied this, the most successful people in the world have, number 1, laser focus, and number 2, they have the highest energy of anybody in the room. I mean, you want to look at an example that's famous? Tom Cruise. That guy is a living example of focus and energy.
He doesn't look like a day over 50. I mean, I know he's like 60, isn't he?
Yeah, he's my age. He's like 60.
He's your age. Holy shit. I'm like, this guy looks like, I don't know what his beauty regime is, but anyway, that's a whole new But anyway.
You know what the funny thing, a lot of that beauty comes from within, right? You're looking after yourself. I'll be 61 in a couple of weeks, and it was so funny because my wife and I, the other day, we're making some donations to charity items, and the fellow accepting the charity items, he was like, I gave him, it's kind of funny, it's silly, I had an old cowbell from when I used to be a drummer, okay? When I was 16 years old, my wife was like, you seriously hanging on to this? You haven't played this in like 30 years. And I'm like, well, it's sentimental. And I thought, no, it's ridiculous. It's just more clutter. So I gave it to the guy. I was like, wow, everybody needs more cowbell, right? And I said, well, what? I've had that cowbell since I was 16 years old when I used to play in a band. He's like, really? He says, wow, that's great. I said, yeah, man, that's a long time ago. That's like, 44 years ago. And he looks at me like, well, you're 44. I go, no. That was 44 years ago when I was 16. I said, you just paid me a great compliment. And so I get that all the time, because once you it is possible to literally reinvent yourself. And so once I made these distinctions here, it became relatively simple to figure out what I need to start doing and what I need to stop doing. And I had to retrain my brain to like exercise and thrive on it, to like and love foods that were healthy on me, and deprogram myself from stuff that was not healthy. And I'll tell you, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a good point, because what you're explaining to us really is essentially because reprogramming yourself. It's difficult. Like I just said to you at the beginning, it's like change is difficult. Change is hard. Right? Yes, we have to go through in order to evolve and be a better person. But I guess, we're all human at the end of the day. What would you say going from the time where you found it easier as it was getting easier, but before the time that it was started to get easier, I guess you must have really like gone through a lot of not just psychological struggles, but also emotional roller coasters because you'd been out of condition for so long. What were kind of some of the negativity, or maybe you had to deal with Mr. Inner Critic or whatever? What are the things that you had to deal with, and how did you combat that?
Ah, that's a really, really good question. Really good question. So, the first principle I used was the principle of incremental progression, meaning that I knew that I wanted to drop this amount of weight. I knew I wanted to get back into shape. I knew I had to reprogram all of this stuff, get over the dopamine addictions, the food addictions, the social media addictions. We have them, by the way. This is universal. Today, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I knew I had to work on that, but I also recognized that I'm human, but I also recognized the incredible power of incremental progression, meaning that, look, when you're 60 years old and you weigh that much and you're clearly out of shape and you're not healthy, if I were to go to the gym day one and try and bench 250 pounds, I'm going to wind up either in traction or a heart attack, right? Here's what I did. And you're going to sound ridiculously simple, but I started to do I made the decisions to do one thing at a time in small things. For example, I couldn't do any push-ups, which is ridiculous because I was so out of shape. So what do? Start with one.
Right.
One push-up. Now, this is the important thing. I go to my basement where I have a little workout space. I do one push-up the very first day and I quit. You know why I quit? Because I made a promise to myself to only do one. Most people make the mistake of saying, well, you've done one, why don't you do another one? Push yourself, right? But I realized that pushing myself, I could injure myself. So what a lot of people don't realize is the key to building self-confidence and integrity is to do it within yourself, is to keep promises within yourself first. Because if you can't keep a promise to yourself, you clearly can't keep it with other people. So I would do the one push-up. I'd say, well done, mate. Good job. Tomorrow I'll do two. Well done. Tomorrow I'll do three. And I'll tell you, within about 6 to 8 weeks, I could do, 5 sets of 10 or whatever the case was. I started walking very, very gradually. First month, I lost, I think, 12 pounds. The weight started coming off almost immediately. So what I'm doing on a daily basis is small increments, and I'm psychologically rewarding myself every single time.
What was the reward? What was you rewarding yourself with?
Well, my psychological reward was keeping my promises to myself.
Nice.
That was it.
Nice.
Keeping my promises to myself. That was it. That's the whole key.
It's interesting because when I studied psychology, they had this principle, and you'll be familiar with this, of the whole kind of risk and reward principle. If you fail, I suppose in a way it's kind of like, what are you going to do to reward yourself? Like, what is the big win if you achieve X goal, whatever that goal looks like? Then what is the big fear? So like, what is the big fear that you're going to then attack if you fail to meet that goal or whatever it might be? And you may have this big, I don't know, fear of spiders or whatever it might be. I don't know. But you get my point, right?
Well, for myself, the one thing I did do, to your point, was I saw these fantastic T-shirts that were form-fitting, and the form I was fitting in was disgusting. I was not. I feel I'm lucky to be happily married to a beautiful woman for like 35 years already, and she's still gorgeous to this day. And I'm like, man, I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. Instead of looking like the after picture, I was the fat flabby before, and I was like, I've had it with that. So I went and bought a T-shirt that was like a medium size, and I was nowhere near a medium in those days, right? So I bought a T-shirt, and I think it cost me $150, like expensive.
Whoa!
Yeah. So I hung it up, and it was in my closet waiting till I could get down to the size. And
Love it.
I couldn't wait to wear it. But also, just when you start to see the weight come off, and my wife would laugh, because when the weight comes off, it never comes off where you want it, in the belly. It always starts in your fat head, and your head actually does get fat. So as it comes off, your face kind of gets a bit lopsided, So, and my wife is saying, "Oh my God, you're melting in front of me." It's like, but as it comes down, and then, when you drop 10 pounds, say 4 or 5 kilos, you can notice the difference, of course, in your legs and knees, because good grief, think about it. I mean, a jug of water this big is 20 kilos. And I was carrying around that jug every single day. So just the psychological reward was fantastic. And then with my diet, which I pretty much did low keto, lots of greens, proteins, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I really had to get over my body being addicted. Now, there's 3 things that really threaten our health that are universal. One of them is high blood pressure. The other one is glucose intolerance, our blood sugar, obviously. And the other thing is inflammation. And I had all 3 of those. Really high blood pressure, really bad inflammation, like in my bones and aching and stuff like that. And I discovered that it wasn't really arthritis, even though I have something called ankylosing spondylitis. It's like a type of rheumatoid arthritis, but it is triggered by diet, 99%. The minute I got rid of the sugars and the lousy carbohydrates in my diet, all of the inflammation went away. My glucose levels went to normal. My blood pressure came down to normal. Resting heart rate at like 63, everything corrected itself. And so your energy naturally comes back. And it's odd because my brother now, I'm trying to get him on the bandwagon. He's a lot taller than I am, but he's looking stooped over and old. And I was too. But the beauty is you can completely reinvent yourself at any time, even starting at 60. So I tell people the change actually happens really fast. It took me about 5 months to drop all this weight, but it was rewarding every single day, because the people I was working with, they're like, "What are you at this week?" Like every week you're dropping a couple pounds, and they're like, "Oh my God, your belly is vanishing." And it's so funny because I was working with a company, helping them to increase their sales, and they're watching me, and everybody at the office that I was working with started eating healthier. They were like sick and tired of their eating cookies and junk, and I'm sitting here having a bowl of berries and yogurt. And they're like, "You're making us feel guilty." I said, "I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just trying to get my act together." But I ended up inspiring the whole team there to eat healthier and start exercising. So you don't realize how profound your influence is by leading by example. And because I was a CEO before I ever did any kind of coaching or mentoring, I felt I stopped coaching people for a couple of years, because I said, I'm not leading. And if you're not living it, you should not be leading it, which I kind of think really goes to the heart of the matter. A lot of people talk to me about leadership, and they don't recognize that it is largely an inside job first. You have to lead here and here first.
Love that. For you guys that are listening in, by the way, and if you have any questions, feel free to use the comment in the comment section below, and make sure that you follow me and Mr. Les Evans over on LinkedIn or on YouTube. You can click on that bell notification, click on the follow button. And if you have the privilege, if you can't join with us live, of course, you can listen to us on the podcast, of course, and we'll put all Les' contact details in the bottom of the description notes. So if you want to reach out to him, ask any questions, whatever it is, I'm sure he'll just revert back to the podcast, and I'm sure he'll be kind enough to reply to your questions or whatever it is. Question. Now, I know that at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking a little bit about, entrepreneurs, business leaders, and whatever it is. Now, we all know that whole kind of like, especially if you are a solopreneur, if you are successful, it doesn't matter who you are, successful business man, millionaire, whatever it might be. But what do you think, from your perspective, your general observation, are some of the core common mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners making in regards to, I mean, you've been on a massive transformation,
Mhm.
right? Okay. What have you seen in terms of the correlation between the links between success and business? Should we say health and wealth? What would you say the big links are?
Well, again, it comes down to focus and energy. Those two things go hand in hand. And this is where I shared this with you because you saw a Facebook post, I think, and I posted on my Instagram the other day a
Yep.
video I'd made. And
Yep.
I told this story very briefly of how I'd spent the last 4 months coaching and mentoring 341 because I added up. I couldn't believe it because I was working with about 6 individual entrepreneurs a day, 5 days a week, like 10-hour days, coaching and mentoring them. And what astonished me was this. It was like no matter what background they came from, no matter the size of their business, some were really small businesses, mom and pop, solopreneur. I had one lady, multi-millionaire. She had a $30 million horse farm. I mean,
Oh,
I worked with a Hollywood actor who's quite well known. I'm not going to say his name, but this is the fascinating thing. Excuse me. When I asked them, because when you get on these coaching calls or mentoring calls, you ask people, okay, what do you want? What's your goal? What's your objective? And they'd all say the same things. Well, I want to make more money. Duh, right? I want more time. I want more time for my family. I want more freedom. I want to grow and scale my business. I want to live my life intentionally on purpose. I want to leave a legacy, those kinds of things. I said, oh, okay, wonderful. And I said, so next question, and anybody who's out there who's a coach or mentor knows this process. It's not magic. I'd say, okay, so next question is, what's preventing you from getting those things? What's standing in your way? And this is where I had the shock of my life, because every single one of them, this was the universal answers. They're like, I can't focus. I'm like scatterbrained. I've got ADHD. Almost every single person labeled themselves as ADHD. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? And this is men and women from like every spectrum. And they're like, I can't sleep. I don't have enough energy. I'm got anxiety. My health and relationships are suffering. I never have enough time in the day to do what I truly desire. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And every day it was the same. It's like they read the same book. It was unbelievable. And I was like, what is this? The greatest book of excuses, But and then so me being me, I said, okay, so those are your problems. What have you done? Like what's your strategy? What have you done? And again, everybody said the same things. Well, like, hey, I'm watching like motivational videos on YouTube and TikTok. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm reading self-improvement books. I'm going to Tony Robbins or Grant Cardone or et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going, okay, how is that working out? And they're like, it's okay. I go, okay, well, if it's working out so great, why are you and I on the phone talking like you still have problems? And that's where, I was like, well, just hold the phone here. I realized that one of the greatest challenges we have today is our attention has been hijacked and severely hijacked. And attention today, as they say, is the new currency. And we are living, particularly in social media, in a battlefield for our attention. And our attention goes to focus. And the minute we get distracted, so what I realized was instead of living their lives, people were doing a lot of activities, gaining lots and lots of knowledge. And hey, I'm a big fan of personal growth, as you know. I mean, we're doing a podcast here today. But what was happening is I saw people living in their minds and having knowledge rather than doing in real life. And so they were spending hours and hours and hours on social media or Netflix or gaming, et cetera, et cetera. And that was distracting them from doing what they wanted to achieve. And so once I came to that revelation, I was like, they have the single challenge we have today, and this is a real problem. We have people's dopamine systems are completely hijacked. Our physical systems are hijacked by lousy food that, triggers our insulin, for example. So I started to look at that as a real problem because I said, we are living in an age today where there's more knowledge and more information than ever. So why do people still have these problems? And I realized they're oversaturating. They're spending all their time living in their heads rather than focusing in real life on those three key areas. And so one of the things I did immediately, recognizing that, because I'm just like everybody else, just as human as the next person, I shut my phone off. Because I used to take my phone to bed and scroll through. Anybody have to do this? You're all guilty. Admit it, right? Me too. And then I'd fall asleep to some podcast going, and my stupid phone would be going all night. And my wife was like, how can you possibly be healthy and rested? And she was so fed up. And I finally said, you know what that does? It starting at 8 p.m., the phone goes off and it's left in another room. And my phone is off 12 hours a day. And so I'm not on social media. The key here is to use social media, not let it use you. That was a huge thing. And I thought that I would have withdrawal, but funny enough, I did not. And I had the most restful sleep ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, period.
Yeah.
So coming back to those things. So when I kind of made this announcement on this video, I got a few messages from psychologists. They're like, this is funny. I got one this morning from a psychologist in Australia. She's like, what's your system? I need to know how to fix this. And it literally took me it took me 90 minutes to put my plan into place, but it took me about 6 months to reverse engineer how I actually did all this stuff. And it goes back to this simple formula here, and it's deconstructing and reprogramming yourself. And the effect it has is absolutely profound, because now you start to live your life truly on purpose and intentionally. And I think I shared this with you yesterday. I don't have a to-do list. My songwriting is calendared in as a necessity. It's not an afterthought. It's calendared in. My health rituals are calendared in every morning. So when I get up in the mornings, I automatically immediately start preparing berries for breakfast. I don't even think. That's part of my prep time. My wife is getting ready. I start, because we have fresh berries every morning. That's a big part of my routine. You know how healthy that is. And immediately going from that, I put the pot of coffee on, and then it's downstairs into my workout routine. Just everything is automatic with me, rituals. And so it's just the consistency. I don't have a major workout routine, but I actually lost 5 belt sizes, and I went up a jacket size because I put on so much muscle into my chest. So I'm a 44 now instead of a 42. So the process is it's actually simple to implement. The hardest part probably is just the first couple of weeks, getting over deprogramming the dopamine, deprogramming your sugar addictions, your addictions to television, whatever. You know, I had a gentleman from the US reach out to me, and he saw my photo, and he's like, how the hell did you do that? I want to learn. And I said, as long as you follow my steps, I guarantee you that you're going to drop the weight, because he was 40 years old, 42. He had all sorts of problems health-wise already, you know, same issues, high blood pressure, the weight, etc. So in his first 2 months, he dropped 20 pounds. He went from watching 4 hours a night of Netflix.
Damn.
Because he was saying, I never have enough time. So we did a time audit. And I said, how much is Netflix paying you? He goes, well, they're not. I said, well, you're sure paying them. And that really woke him up, you know, because our attention is that's your life force being drained on that particular activity. This is my spiritual belief. I believe we're given this God-given life force. And there's an expression, a great friend of mine told me a couple months ago. He says, you know what? The devil, however you want to look at that, the devil doesn't have to take your life. He doesn't have to take away your livelihood. He doesn't have to steal your children, your spouse or partner. He doesn't have to do any of that stuff. All he has to do is just distract you from what you were meant to do with your life. And when I heard that, I went, my gosh, that's it. It all boils down to 2 things. To me, distraction and discouragement are the devil's greatest tools. And once I recognized that last year, I said, I can't let myself get discouraged if I'm overweight, if I'm down. back in World War II, they used to use a phrase. They called it morale, right? Keeping the
Mm,
morale of the troops up. And morale was not so much a positive attitude, but I like to use that word, morale. Key part of this formula is managing your morale, knowing that if I'm on a path and I use the principle of incremental progression, I'm going to get to my destination. It is inevitable. I just have to have patience. And part of the thing is relearning patience, because our dopamine has been so hacked. What would normally be the big reward at the end, like you said, the t-shirt, you know what? I'll just eat a bowl of ice cream instead. Then I get that
right.
reward, right?
Love that.
And it's like the difference between pornography and real sex. This is why, porn is very damaging to our dopamine systems, because to create an intimate relationship with a partner requires work, so to speak. And you have to woo them and seduce them and romance them. That's a lot of work, right?
Absolutely.
For the reward. But this is the glue that makes our life so magical. So recognizing that we need to stop living in our minds so much. And this is what I've really seen happen in the world. Our minds are being hijacked to too much information too fast, rather than living out in the real world. Once I came to that conclusion, it's like, no, I'm going to start living back my life in real life. So,
yep. Love that. Love that. Now let's talk a little bit about your framework, because I know you've created yourself that little formula, and we've been talking a little bit about that. And you guys that are listening in on the podcast, Les has got and we'll describe that here as well, because I know that you can't see the video, we're doing a live show, but you could kind of give a bit of a run through about your formula, and what is it that people need to do? How can they apply this particular formula if they want to go on this, I don't know, call it transformational journey, if you wish you would call that, or transformational shift, and how do we apply it? So maybe you can walk us through it.
Well, again, it really starts at the beginning. This is what worked for me. I'm not telling you that you have to do this. I'm just telling you, I believe in teaching from applied knowledge. So to my mind, there's tons of book knowledge out there today. Doesn't mean it's legit. This is the thing, making a discernment. I've always believed in leading by example. I'm not a person who teaches from book knowledge, although I've read thousands of books. I believe in teaching from real life applied knowledge, so firsthand experience. So Aristotle said we learn by doing, and this was very much that process, a trial process. But taking these things and breaking them down into these three areas, like joy was a big part of it, but also part of that is your life's purpose, deciding what you want to do with your life, your intentions. Everything to me that encompasses joy is all about life purpose. What am I meant to do? What am I meant to share? And joy, by the way, for example, can be little things. Like, I love to make people laugh. I have a fondness for cartoon voice mimicry. I'm a very good mimic. I can impersonate a lot of different, famous people. And when I'm around people, I like to use those voices to humor people, make them laugh. I think it's a wonderful gift to make somebody smile or laugh on a daily basis. That's a little thing. Listening to a great song gives me joy. Going out and helping my wife buy flowers and plants for the house gives me great joy, because she just loves that stuff. It makes her life better. So again, when those three areas, and the same thing with income and health, is deciding what specific result you want to get, and then doing an audit, per se, an audit of who and what you're spending your time with, and figuring out, and this is where I'll dive into it just a little bit, is where a lot of people fall short, is they think in terms of productivity courses and stuff like that. And I saw a well-known guru advertising a productivity course for $3,000, and it's 12 weeks long. And I'm like, shit. Seriously? I got to spend 3 months learning how to get more productivity? That's like an oxymoron or something, right? I was like, this is ridiculous. So it all boils down to energy management, not time management. You only have so many hours a day. You only have so much energy. So the first thing I want to do is maximize my energy. Health has to be a focus. There is no question. And that involves a bit of like for me, a bit of my cardio is pretty modest. I just walk every day, but strength training is a big part of it. Adjusting my posture, making my posture straight. There's a little, again, incremental progression. Eating things that power my body, and diet makes an enormous difference on your mental clarity. When you're physically strong, you can achieve a lot more. So that has to be a priority. Mental health, again, managing your morale has to be part of it. Part of my routine for that is gratitude. I think I'm not going to go into that because everybody knows about gratitude, but that is the most powerful thing to, fight things off. And with a lot of crummy stuff going on in the world right now, I came to the conclusion that I, as one man, can't solve the world's problems. I can do my part, and I kind of have to give the big stuff to God. That's just my belief. So let, kind of Jesus take the wheel, if you will, as an expression. You can only manage what you can manage. Focus on your environment. But then the other thing I went down to is once I looked at these areas and broke them down, and that includes within your work, I'll just explain quickly, is like, if I want to achieve these things, how many hours in a month do I want to allocate to, like, let's say songwriting? How many hours do I want to write songs? Because writing songs is not necessarily about inspiration, it's about perspiration.
Absolutely.
And so if I don't allocate time to do it, it's not going to get done. It'll be like everything else pushed to the side. And so deciding what is specifically important to you, not to somebody else, specifically assigned to you, how many hours a week do I want to allocate to that? Okay, let's say it's 2. Okay, 2 hours. Then I know I need 8 hours in a given month. And I know that I only have so many hours in a given month. I'm going to allocate 8 hours and they will get calendared in. This is the difference. It's again, the incremental progression. And I did it slowly but surely. I didn't do everything all at once, so I wouldn't overwhelm myself bit by bit, but I slowly pared down what are the necessary activities. Time for relationships, time for going out with friends, in your work buckets. Like I used to coach people in the workspace because they say, I'm always getting interrupted. Okay, well, figure out what are your buckets in work? Marketing, advertising, HR, recruiting, whatever those buckets are. You have to break down how many hours do I need to allocate to those things to address them and calendar them in. This is how that's why you don't see billionaires with to-do lists. They focus in only on the necessary activities that propel them, that add value. If it doesn't add value, it's out of your life. Just that simple. So it's a little more involved with that. When I coach people on this, which I've started to do now, I take them through individually because it's kind of tough to do it by yourself. I'm kind of a rare bird that way. I've always been very self-driven internally. Once I get fed up enough, I figure, that's what I use this brain power for. But it's essentially just reconstructing your life and shifting your resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking about your energy and your life force. Those are your most precious resources. So everybody's got 24 hours a day. It's how you utilize them, which is cliche, but it is so true.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, I know that we're coming towards the end of our chat and stuff like that, but you know what I'm fascinated to learn about? I'm fascinated to learn, okay, the upgrade is done, or still kind of, fine-tuning, if you like. What next for Mr. Les Evans? Like, what's happening in your life? How are you going to use this transformation, if you like, to do the stuff that you really want to do, apart from enjoying your personal life and stuff? But what do you want to do? Like, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Next 5 years, I'm going to be an old man.
It's all in the mind. It's all in the mind.
It's all in the mind. Well, there is a benefit because since I turned age 60, a lot of people will give you a senior's discount. And that sounds funny, but I am not offended by that at all. The age thing doesn't bother me because it's a
Right.
natural progression of life. You know,
Sure.
it's like,
Sure.
you know, my hair is going gray. This is my natural hair color, gray on the sides, dark on the top. And I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. You know, when you're, you know, again, when you start to eat properly, your skin is much, much more youthful. So when you're
Absolutely.
healthy, it's just really the age factor comes back to how much is that energy shining through.
Mm.
But to answer your question, I have a good friend of mine. He's working with a network marketing organization, and they've invited me out. I love speaking to people all over the world. It's something I think I'm very good at least all accounts.
I agree. I agree.
And I miss doing that.
Mm.
Not because it's an attention thing for me. For me, it's connection with an audience.
Mm. Yeah.
I love the ability to maybe give someone an insight or help them with, and I say, hey, I never thought of that before. Or I don't like to use the word motivate. I prefer inspiration. If I can inspire somebody, because I believe inspiration is internally driven. I like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I like to be able to use my life as an example for people to say, hey, listen, you know, I was a CEO of a investment company that was trading $100 million a day. Now, when you look back at my life, I barely made it out of high school, flunked college, I have no degree in finance. I used to be a mailman with a learning disability, which I still have to this day. So if I can build a company that trades $100 million a day, be the CEO, sell that, and then go on to become a really respected mentor in 24 countries, what's your excuse? Right.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I like to just use that as my life's example. And I'm as flawed as anybody else out there. You know, it's not about being perfect at all, not even remotely close. And I love this great analogy that I heard once. I think it was Joe Walsh from the Eagles who said, when you look at your life, sometimes with all the conflict and strife and difficulty, there's good times and bad times, but all this stuff, it looks like a mess of, you know, paint splatters sometimes. And, you know, it's just like a mess. It's like, you know, what is that? And when you're close to the canvas, as you know, with fine art, when you're close to the canvas, you can't see it. But once you finally step back and you look back on your life, you realize that you've painted a masterpiece and you didn't even realize it. So
Absolutely.
that's what I like is to know that anything that if you've done bad in the past, that means you have the capacity to do good in the future. And this is what I love. You can always reinvent yourself. And I think that's kind of my biggest message today that I want to carry out to people and say, listen, this is achievable. I know I had a friend of mine a few years ago that said, Les, your life is unachievable. Like people look at you like this. It's unachievable. And I go, no, that's ridiculous. It is achievable. It's all about incremental progression, focusing on where you want to go and bringing all you have to that. I mean, it's just that simple.
Some good stuff. Listen, guys, I hope that you've been enjoying our conversation with me and Mr. Les Evans, of course. And for you guys that have been listening to us, feel free to make any comments. Even if you listen to the recording as well, you can use the hashtag replay, of course. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Les. He's over on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. He's big on Instagram. But also feel free to reach out to him. We'll put all these details below on the podcast. Les, I just want to say thank you so much for being a great guest on the show again. You're welcome. Always a pleasure. I love hanging out with you. We get along like peas in a pod, right? We do. Well, listen, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed today's show. Do me a favor. If you have enjoyed today's show, feel free to leave a 1 or a 5-star review over on Apple or Spotify. Obviously, I love 5-star reviews, but you know, if it wasn't up to your expectation, I'm sorry, we disappointed you. But anyway, I always kind of like open and honest feedback. But listen, leave the feedback. I would greatly appreciate it. And hopefully you can come join us on another live show. If not, go over and listen on the podcast over on our favorite podcast channel. Anyway, for me and Les, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show with us, listening in, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Take care, and we'll see you.